Hey folks, I'm just gonna crank out a video right now because I had to eat some cannabis, which takes a little time because oh damn it, it's still going. Yeah, I'm gonna eat like 100 milligrams of 100 milligram cannabis bar. It's funny with like eating weed, it's like hardcore, like I don't know, like the hardcore like competitive stoners will be like 100 milligrams, that ain't nothing. I do 500 for breakfast or whatever. Like they literally, like I know people who literally do like they're always on like 200 milligrams or 300 milligrams or something. So that's expensive, or unless they're got a good hook or they're growing. But but anyway, I got some. But like the supposedly like one dose is 10 milligrams, so 100 milligrams is like was actually too much for me like a couple weeks ago when I started getting high again because I was like sober for a couple months when I was finishing my book. Um, so 100 milligrams was too much for me, but now it's like almost not enough already because now my uh, tolerance is back. So anyway, this is something Galactic Lime Gummy Bear Cream de Cana Santa Cruz local local marijuana mongers. So I gotta cut this thing open because of course a lot of these weed containers are not like they're supposed to be childproof or something, but they're just like everybody proof, or they're just glitchy, so they just don't open. But anyway, here's this thing. I'm just gonna slowly eat this whole damn thing, which is delicious, honestly. I mean, stoners make like by far the best candy and food and everything. Um, but while I'm eating this, I just wanted to talk about, I don't know, just touch base. Like I was just reading something my aunt sent me about the theosophists and about the interrelationship between feminism and spirituality and eugenics in the 1800s and in sense. So like all right, there's this bar. I guess I'll just munch this thing down as fast as I can. Minty. All right, so reading about the theosophists and how basically the leaders of feminism, first wave feminism, and the leaders of the original New Age movement, which is basically the theosophists, and the leaders of the eugenics movement were basically the same people. Like the Eugenics Society of America was like founded by a woman, and the five people running it were women. And so yeah, it was basically, this is just what happens when you have reductionism. Like people talk a lot about class reductionism, but this is sex reductionism, gender reductionism. When you tell people they're oppressed just because they're a woman, I mean, granted, it's true on some level. I'm sure like even rich women have some hardships that are particular to their sex. But by the same token, rich and poor men also sometimes suffer for being male, depending on the situation. I mean, the most obvious situation is war. And like honestly, the fact that so many women go along with this idea that men are so lucky and that women are always in every situation so oppressed and have been forever. It's like they have to be deliberately ignoring the most obvious example, which is war, which is when men are sent to die and women are protected. So, I mean, I still wouldn't want to be like if I lived 100 years ago, I probably would rather be you know, a woman than a man. Um, but I'm against gender roles, like regardless if they're like overly inflexible. Um, but yeah, it's just interesting this article. I'm not sure who it was by, but I guess it was by feminists that were on some level. I don't know. It was very weird, very hard to know whether they were promoting it or condemning it. They were basically trying to do both, but in a way that didn't really account for the contradictions. Um, like it was talking about how um, in India, like the British in India were not considered to be very racist, particularly. I mean, they just were power hungry, but they weren't considered to be as racist until the women came over, until like the officers brought their wives over. And because before that, like a lot of the officers had taken Indian wives and they were just basically integrating and going native, you could say. But when the white women showed up, they put a stop to that and they instituted segregation. And, like segregation was often done in the name of women in the US as well. A lot of, black men and boys were lynched in the name of white women. There were Emmett Till or, all the ones falsely accused of like whistling at a white girl or whatever. So it's like, I mean, I tend to think that white people in general are pretty bad in terms of their influence on the world, like really bad. Like basically, we've destroyed the whole planet in the space of like a century or two. Um, but certainly, I know people who theorize that actually white women might be worse. And, you know, I think there are definitely, this shows that there are situations like that, like in India, the women were worse, or at least they certainly made it worse when they went there and instituted all their racist, policies. Um, I mean, I think there is an extent to which men are more open to, you know, joining some other culture, marrying into some other culture, and then the white women get pissed at them and say, you're marrying down, this is miscegenation. So a lot of times it's women who are the most upset. And that may be partly just because they're losing their potential mates because the white men are marrying like Indian women or black women or something. And maybe they don't feel as, uh, maybe they don't think it's as easy for them to go and marry like an Indian man or something. Um, who knows? But but like I have respect for a lot of the things that theosophists did and that feminists did. Um, but like it's interesting how, with all the burning of and destruction of statues and stuff, um, like that has to include, if you're gonna reject like people who had slaves or whatever, if you're gonna reject people for having some deep, deep flaw, then that has to include these early feminists who were eugenicists, and it has to include like the early New Age movement, which was, you know, largely eugenicists. It has to include everybody, virtually. Like, I've studied history and philosophy, and I've read all these different writers, and they're pretty much all deeply flawed. They just are. Like, it just boggles my mind that people haven't caught on to that they still think like, oh no, but these ones are the flawless ones, and here's a flawless example for us to follow. There's no flawless example for us to follow. Um, like even if you go into hunter-gatherer societies, they're arguably much better than ours because they're not, because they're sustainable. Um, but they're still deeply flawed a lot of times. I mean, I don't know, for whatever reason, a lot of people just tend to be deeply flawed. Um, I mean, animals too, maybe. I don't know. My cat is deeply annoying. I would call that a flaw. But so yeah, and it talks about, this article talked about the founder of I think it's Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, and how she was like a feminist eugenicist. Um, but yeah, like if that's just the obvious problem of people who act like women are just always the victim and they're always right, is that then you give rich women who arguably are the treated better than anybody else in our society, other than maybe the top CEO, male CEOs or something. But I don't know. I'd say there's at least an argument to be made that rich women have the best lives in our society. They're the most protected, the least attacked. Um, but at the very least, they're rich, right? So if you give them this idea that they're the aggrieved victim of history and of the world, without making them understand like the evils of capitalism and of hierarchy, then you just get this kind of monstrosity of like Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, like Margaret Thatcher, girl bossism. And yeah, I mean, that's like, and it's a given that that's going to dominate feminism, visible feminism, because visible everything is whatever has the most funding, right? It doesn't mean that's the most widespread feminism. It just means that's what's going to be promoted so that we actually see it on TV or on the internet or wherever we see it. Um, we're always going to see that because the world is controlled by money. Obviously, the people with the money are not going to promote um, an end to their reign. So they promote versions of feminism and spirituality that are not a threat to their economic position, and even to their position as imperialists. because this was showing that um, the the views of the feminists and New Age spiritualist women, um, like a lot of the spiritual, like some of the main women that were described in this article were in India, like you know, I think Annie Besant for Theosophists, and somebody named something Miley or something, who was like the wife of or the daughter of a British general or something in India, and married another British general there, and believed that women should rule the world. But she was also a very enthusiastic imperialist, and she was very angry at Aryan men who um, who would miscegenate, who intermarry with non-whites, um, and yeah, like, and they had a huge influence, like they had a huge, like the Theosophists and all these eugenicists and feminists who were basically the same people. They had a huge influence on the League of Nations and the fledgling UN. They had a huge influence on the foundation of India, like the Congress Party, I believe, of that I think was Gandhi's party, or I don't know, I think it was the ruling party of India for a long time after independence, and it was largely dominated by the Theosophists and, you know, to some extent controlled by the Theosophists, um, including Annie Besant and others. So yeah, it's like it just shows like you can't, like, identity politics in the sense of um, you know, addressing issues to do with identity. That's an important thing, part and parcel of politics. But when you when you confuse that, or you allow that to become something where all the members of one demographic are just, deified, and all the members of some other demographic are demonized, um, then you're gonna have shit like this. You're gonna have basically right wing, like, you know, evil, uh, clothing itself as feminism and spirituality and everything. Um, and maybe it could be a lot of the same people that are running this, the psyops that we're in right now, like regarding, the medical and biometric ID psyops and everything, because it's like these people who are just into social engineering, into like, you know, formulating society without consulting or really listening to the people. Um, like the Rockefeller Foundation was probably influenced by that type of stuff because it came about at the same time as the heyday of all that. Um, and a lot of it was associated with the Republican Party. Um, so yeah, we might be, uh, some of what we're suffering now might be the range plans of these kind of eugenic, rich white feminists of, the late 1800s and early 1900s. Um, they had a theory that, like, they said that the master race right now is the Aryan race, which which I guess they took to mean white people. I don't know. But they believed that the next master race, which will be the true master race, like virtually a god race or something, was going to come out of California. And so that's probably why like they founded a lot of weird, churches and organizations around California, and especially in Southern California, a lot of the Theosophists were based there. And so anyway, it's pretty dumb, like there was one of them that even said like that the new Californian race was already starting to take shape, and they're describing it, and it's like just so dumb. They're like, yes, the Californians, they have big foreheads and big eyes and big chins or something, and it's just so dumb. Like it's probably based on just some particular ethnic group that migrated to that part of California that they were in, probably like British or Scottish or something. But it just shows how profoundly stupid and insane like a lot of rich people and a lot of powerful and influential people are. Um, you know, I mean, that's the best argument against hierarchy, is just how just a lot of people generally are fucking insane and fucked up and stupid, but especially a lot of the people at the top, a lot of powerful people are just like, they maintain like ideas that would not survive like contact with reality, but as rich people they don't have to have contact with reality, you know anyway, I guess I'll like leave it there. Let me see if there's anything else to say. um I don't know, I've been watching some show on Netflix called Merlin that's kind of cool because it has like a lot of references to like the original story and the mythology and everything. It talks about like Avalon, which was America, and um yeah, it's just interesting to see like how everything gets twisted into some silly meaning. Like I think the original story of King Arthur was like about the planets and stars or something. Like a lot of it is not even about human beings, it's just pretending to be about human beings, but yeah, I think a lot of it is us. It's astronomy slash astrology, um, and like even at one point, I think, or at least in this show, it says like Odin. Odin sends somebody to kill King Uther Pendragon. He's Arthur's dad. Even the fact that it's like Uther and Arthur like suggests to me that it's mythology, because in mythology, like a lot of times the gods that are connected to each other have very similar names, especially in like the Norse mythology. Um, so anyway, and like Odin, for instance, is the planet Mercury. So if Odin was trying to kill Uther, that suggests that Uther is either another celestial body or a constellation or it could be a landmass, because land masses were gods in the ancient ways. So anyway, just 800 milligrams. Gonna watch that all night because my sleep patterns all nocturnal right now. And well, just one tidbit, I guess, like I was reading in ancient Egyptian texts, and I saw that Hapi, who is the Nile, is referred to as a lake. which just shows to me what I always suspected, which is that there is no word for lake. Like literally they just call everything is translated as lake because there's a word, ancient Egyptian word, which means basically water, waterway. And and Egyptologists seems to be that they're so stupid that they and just perverse that um they just call it lake because in some cases it is a lake, but it's not always a lake because it just is the word for all waterways. So like I've been studying the underworld maps of America, and in the middle of the running north to south through the center of America is always the red line, the which is called, it's like a thin red line, but it's translated as the Lake of Fire. But it's like there's no way that that's like a correct translation because how is a lake going to be that long and skinny? Like there's rivers that are less long and skinny than that lake. So the fact that the Nile is called a lake too pretty much is evidence that these Europeans who translate this shit are retarded. Like there's no excuse. I'm sorry. If you can tie your shoes, you can figure out that unless there's something I don't know about this, but I don't see any other explanation than there's just a word that clearly means just any waterway because it's applied to the Nile and it's applied to these other long waterways that are long and skinny, and but they just have to translate it as lake because some idiot did so like 100 years ago, and so now they just had to keep using that translation. And also like the Copts, I know I've read a account of a Coptic person that was referring to Amentet, the West, America, the underworld, and he was talking about the river of fire in the underworld in Amentet. So obviously that's translating. It's you know there's very little chance he's referring to something separate from the quote unquote lake of fire in the underworld maps. It's almost certain that it's the same thing, but the fact that it's that he says river or whatever he says is translated as a river is yet more reason to discount the translation of it as lake um, by the mainstream Egyptologists. All right, I'll just leave it there and take care, everybody.